Hello everyone, this is Zachary Ware, and for this video I wanted to be discussing Nudge, Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth, and Happiness, a book written by Richard Thaler and Sunstein. In this book we are presented with a few key concepts right off the bat: choice architects, humans and econs, and libertarian paternalism. A choice architect is defined by Thaler and Sunstein as a person who has responsibility for organizing the context in which people make decisions. In other words, a choice architect can be anyone who influences a person's decision. A doctor explaining alternative treatments, a hairdresser showing different hairstyles to a customer, or even a person in charge of restocking shelves in a certain manner. A choice architect doesn't force a person to choose a specific option, but instead presents a range of information, either knowingly or unknowingly, in a way that influences a person's final decision, a nudge. Also discussed throughout this book are the ideas of humans and econs. An econ, derived from the fictional Homo economicus, is considered an individual that makes every decision perfectly and without bias. They are immune to economic hysteria and operate without any falter in their being. A human, however, is the economic opposite of an econ. A human falters in their decision-making, makes poor decisions, and is a very biased individual. Finally, libertarian paternalism is the idea of nudging a person to make a decision that would be good for them, without forcing the individual to make a certain decision. Here, the individual still has the freedom to make any choice they wish. The individual is free to smoke or not to smoke, drink or not to drink, and etc. But the nudge imposed on them would make the decision that would most benefit the individual. From the introduction, Thaler and Sunstein split the book into 5 parts: humans and econs, money, health, freedom, and extensions and objections. The first section, humans and econs, discusses heuristics and biases, how we think, and information framing. In Chapter 1, Biases and Blunders, we are introduced to the idea that we think in 2 different systems, an automatic and a reflective system. The automatic system can also be referred to as a gut reaction, and the reflective system as conscious thought. Throughout the research, Thaler and Sunstein reached the conclusion that almost all people are loss-averse, leading to an emotional automatic system, meaning that people think more of what they could lose rather than what they stand to gain, leading people to not make major changes in their lives. This ties into their discussion with challenging the status quo. The example given here is that a person who starts watching a specific television channel one evening is more likely to continue watching that same channel throughout the entire evening rather than switching channels. Framing and temptation are also discussed in this section. Framing refers to how a question or anything is set up. It could be using certain phrasing in a question to lead a person to a specific answer, or the organization of foods on a shelf to either sell more or less of a specific item. Temptation, in this reference, is referred to as arousal in terms of hot or cold. An example given here is that if a person is hungry and walks past an aromatic bakery, the person is said to be in a hot state of arousal and would more easily be tempted to eat more than if they were in a cold state, or less hungry. Temptation is also many times associated with mindless choosing, or autopilot, not paying attention to what you're currently doing. An example of this from the book is when people mindlessly eat what's in front of them regardless of whether they're hungry or not. Research by Brian Wansink also suggests that the size of food packaging or the size of a plate or bowl can also act as a nudge, causing people to eat different amounts. Temptation and autopilot are both considered to be self-control issues. Thaler and Sunstein present the idea that people are made up into 2 different parts, a planner and a doer. The planner uses a reflective system and is considered long-sighted, and the doer uses the automatic system. They discuss that because self-control is often an issue, people develop different types of strategies to help them: lists, alarm clocks, daily planners, etc. Another way people are said to strategize against self-control issues is to use mental accounting. Mental accounting is an economic concept that basically states that an individual will mentally separate their current and future assets, or cash, into separate non-transferable entities. Also discussed in this section is the idea of following the herd, or a group mentality. Experiments conducted on this topic show that people often, 20 to 40% of the time, make a decision that they know is wrong simply to be in agreement with the majority of the group that they're in, and that people are also more likely to lie or simply omit information when in a group rather than when discussing a topic one-on-one. Thaler and Sunstein bring to the point that information, peer pressure, and priming are the 3 social influences most easily used by nudgers. So to wrap up the first section, the authors discuss the principles of choice architecture and offer a mnemonic device to understand it. Incentives, understanding mapping, defaults, give feedback, expect error, and structure complex choices. Incentives refers to who is using the product, who is paying for it, who is choosing the product, and who profits from it. Understanding mappings means understanding the relationship between choices and welfare. This means understanding people's ability to map and choose options that will benefit them. Defaults can be thought of as rules of thumbs, vital for understanding certain situations and for making quick decisions. Giving feedback lets humans learn from their mistakes. And obviously, as with all things, there must be room for errors. Finally, a choice architect must structure complex choices, that is, selecting the proper strategy for the humans to make a decision. The second section of this book deals with money and how humans and econs deal with it differently: spending, saving, investing, and borrowing. The main idea in Chapter 6 is that humans are bad at saving money. Thaler and Sunstein propose two suggestions for overcoming this: automatic savings and the Save More Tomorrow program. Automatic savings is what many people already are familiar with, setting up a certain percentage from each pay period to be automatically debited and deposited into a savings fund. To improve on this, many employers offer additional education to their workers to help them save more. The Save More Tomorrow program is a program conceived by Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi that says an individual will increase their active savings each time a pay increase is incurred, meaning that the more a person gets paid over a period of time, the more they're going to save over a period of time. The next topic discussed is investing money. By nature, econs have no issue discerning good investments from bad ones, but humans, on the other hand, get confused by the amounts of variables involved in risk assessment, asset allocation, and stock and bond valuation, leading humans to make more mistakes. Loans and other debt, mortgages, credit card, etc., are straightforward for econs and humans alike. However, when markets begin to become more complicated, those with little experience or education will obviously be at a drastic disadvantage for both econs and for humans. Sections 3, 4, and 5 of this book are very short. Section 3 focuses on health-related issues, and to begin this section, the authors discuss Part D, a U.S. federal program that subsidizes the cost of prescription drug premiums for Medicare beneficiaries, organ donation, and how doctors are major choice architects in the health field. Thaler and Sunstein begin by saying that Part D did meet the planner's expectations but was poorly designed, resulting in poor decision-making. The authors provide possible nudges to improve on the system, such as leading seniors to shop around more for their prescription drugs and not simply following the norm for their prescription drugs. From here, the authors discuss organ donation. As a person would suspect, choice architecture is vital when trying to sway a person to become an organ donor, as consent to donate organs is the largest obstacle to overcome. Thaler and Sunstein suggest to make all individuals organ donors by default, and require those who do not want to donate to opt out. Finally, in this section, it is discussed how choice architecture can be applied to environmental protection. An idea that is thought to be good would be to provide incentive-based regulations and to provide more feedback on an individual level to consumers and individuals on what is being reduced or saved by the companies they go through. Section 4 focuses on freedom, and as discussed before, a libertarian paternalist is a person who must care about freedom of choice. This section covers issues pertaining to education and marriage. So to begin this discussion about education, Thaler and Sunstein introduced the idea of competition among schools in an academic and parental sense. The idea here is that a parent could and should have the option and ability to easily switch their children to a different school if the different school did better on a certain test or benchmark. With more options and more choices, the child should, in theory, end up in the school that is best for them, as thought by the parent. The idea of privatizing marriage is odd to many people. Basically, what Thaler and Sunstein are saying in this chapter is that a push or nudge should be made for the full separation of church and state. That is, that marriage, if done religiously through a church, should not be a matter for government, and that instead, couples could and should enter a domestic partnership, much like a business partnership, if they wish to benefit from the government by their marriage. The last section, Section 5, Extensions and Objections, contains an absolute myriad of information. It has the index and the bibliography, and a reiteration of some information that was brought out earlier in the book. However, what I really liked is that it does give a list of, I think, 36 different nudges that pertain to personal finance. And a couple that I really liked were the automatic tax return, smart meters, and something called an affordable home energy meter. So to kind of break these down and give an idea of what they are and how Thaler and Sunstein talk about them and think about them is the automatic tax return would be applicable to any individual who did not earn a discernible income, but instead earns tips, much like a waiter or waitress. Here, the individual would receive a pre-filled out tax return, and all they would have to do is sign it, make any adjustments if they moved, if they purchased a new car or house, and then simply send it back to the IRS. Short, sweet, and to the point. The smart meter would be something like a thermostat that would make people more aware of the heating and cooling in their house and would charge more during peak hours, kind of enticing people to cut back on their energy consumption during peak hours. But my personal favorite was the affordable home energy meter, which is described as a wireless meter that shows the homeowners or renters, whomever it is, simply how much energy they're consuming on a daily basis, a minute basis, an hourly basis, monthly basis, whatever, and compares it to an average for them along with people around them. Overall, I thought this book was absolutely interesting. Some of the concepts were kind of hard to follow, especially when it got into the health section for me. Not really familiar with a lot of the topics discussed in there, especially with Part D. I had to look up a lot of that stuff. It seemed, like I said, overall interesting, and certainly something to keep in mind as I go through everyday life, trying to discern what choices am I being nudged into making. So definitely a book I would recommend, and definitely a book that I enjoyed reading.